Lives versus livelihoods. That is the balance government is still trying to get right as it's forced to respond to Delta, the new variant of COVID-19 that is now prevalent. The president set to address the nation at 8 to discuss the impact of possible new restrictions on businesses and the economy. We're joined by the author of Ubuntunomics, Sbu Nyathi. Mr. Nyathi, thank you very much. I don't know if you would want to be, but what would you do if you were in the president's shoes tonight?
It's a difficult one, Francis. But if I was the president, I would have to take a big picture, look at everyone. I'm talking about the last time when we had a serious lockdown, people who are subsistence workers, I'm talking about plumbers, people like hawkers, bore the brunt of it. So if I was the president, I would have to look at how do I secure incomes. And the other thing would be, if people are at home, not at work, not earning, what are they going to be eating? So I would make sure that the food supply system also works quite well. So it is basically, if you shut down the country, you basically have to make sure that people have enough to eat and that people have incomes to pay for basically subsistence. Yeah.
And there were some claims that the food lines, people lining up for food parcels during the first hard lockdown, actually exacerbated the spread of COVID-19. So if government's trying to avoid things like that, what do you do? Do you keep the economy open but restrict gatherings? And what do you do about alcohol sales?
It's a pity that we don't have food banks in this country, because the best thing to do would be to send people food at home and not having them running around. Because we might have these serious lockdowns, but still people have to go out and buy groceries. And these supermarkets or hypermarkets are huge. They take up to thousands of people. And so the best would be to have people sitting at home and have some sort of like a food delivery service going. But then, your next question was about alcohol. Well, it is proven that hospitals get inundated with lots of people when alcohol sales are not banned. So I'm sorry for the drinkers, but if I was in the president's shoes, I would put heavy restrictions on alcohol sales. Yeah.
Let's look at where the economy is. So the president's announced that 500 billion economic recovery plan, initially to much fanfare, and he said it showed a new determination. But then we know that the bulk of the money that was quantified there was for Reserve Bank-backed loans from commercial banks, and those weren't really taken up. So a lot of disappointment about that package. On the good, maybe the social grants have been rolled out, and we also saw parts of the economy performing well and recovering well. What would you say is the picture right now?
Oh, right now, there are fears that the UIF TERS has run out of money. I am not so sure as to they would have to answer for themselves, but there are those fears. So incomes, if we are going into a hard lockdown, incomes might just not be secured. And then the other thing is the 500 billion stimulus package we talked about. The 200 of that 200 billion was guarantees for loans at commercial banks. Now, only about 19 billion of that was taken up. So meaning it was less than 10%. And so the government, if in this wave, would have to come up with a better plan, because most small and medium enterprises didn't get any of that money, and secondly, South African corporates are indebted. Even your households, I read last week that about 50% of households are struggling with their debt. So giving out debt is not the best solution, in my view. So I would be looking at things like grants, which are not really payable, or 0% interest on loans. The South African Reserve Bank might help us on that. I don't know what the governor thinks. What the governor thinks will be their contribution this time around, but the South African Reserve Bank will have to step in, I think. Yeah.
What about businesses? What about big corporates? It was a huge thing when it was initially announced in initial lockdown, 50% capacity, half would have to stay at home. But since then, of course, people have become very comfortable with working from home. So if there are further restrictions, do you think it'll be easier, at least for business this time around?
Business wants to make money. They are in the business of making money, and so they would love to have none of these lockdowns, because they impact on them severely. But then again, business are not all the same. Some businesses made huge profits during the lockdown. Of like Zoom. I'm just making an example, and businesses which deliver food, which deliver items. So business is not affected in the same way. And so what I would suggest is that the government must have some sort of like an arrangement with banks, with insurers, and with real estate, because what will hit people the most will be paying for your bond, your mortgage bond, paying for your monthly installments, paying your rent. Those are things which hit people the hardest. And so some businesses are not as severely affected as others. So insurers, for example, were not as affected, not in the same way they are affected. The banks took a hit, but they as soon as the lockdown started easing, they made recoveries. And so basically, what I would say to sum up, I'm not in favor of extending more loans, more debt on an already heavily indebted South African corporate.
All right, but maybe some of the businesses can give those payment holidays again. What is businesses' responsibility here? There does seem to be something that's been welcomed. The fact that private sector vaccination sites will now help. They're not going to only vaccinate people with medical aids, for example. They can be helping government with people who would usually be serviced by the public sector. Is that the sort of cooperation we need in this country?
Yeah, so obviously we need that kind of cooperation. We must, as South Africans, get to an understanding that businesses are South African businesses. This dichotomy of having these public sector businesses viewed differently from private sector businesses has not done us any favors, because these businesses, when they run into trouble, the South African government is expected, which is the South African taxpayer is expected to bail them out, or say like an MTN in Nigeria, if they run in trouble out in Nigeria, the South African government, which is us, all of us, are expected to step in to sort of like ease things for them. So what I'm getting at is that businesses, South African businesses, are the nation's assets. They are not. They may be non-governmental, but they are still our assets, and so they have to also play a part. It's good that private sector hospitals are playing a part, and insurers, health insurance companies should play a part. Also, like we were talking about holidays, payment holidays, business has to be coerced into playing their role in that regard as well. So we must guard against inequity. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Some expectations, some advice there from the author of Ubuntunomics, Sbu Nyathi.